All right. So this is still Mr. Turboville, and it's section 1.2 of our books, characteristics of function graphs. And so we've already talked about some of the attributes and how they look like, how they show up on our graphs. You know, talking about the positive and negative in our first part, and increasing and decreasing, and even maximum and minimum values. And word value, function value, is code for y. Okay, the y values. So that was our section 1, and we dealt with that. But here, they slide this in right in the middle here, and this concept of average rate of change. So this is a pretty big deal, so I'm making a completely separate video of it. And it says average rate of change. And so this is what I want you to get code in your head. When you see average rate of change, I want you to start thinking slope. Slope. So average rate of change, slope. Okay, and remember about slope, what do you need for slope? 2 points. So no matter what they do, they're going to give you something where you can come up with 2 points. And then you can either do rise and run, or you can do what? Y sub 2 minus y sub 1, and x sub 2 minus x sub 1, because that is slope. Okay? So average rate of change is simply just slope. Okay? So what is the function's average rate of change from 0 to 2? So I'm going to have to slide back up here at the top and take a look. So what are the values at 0 and 2? Okay. So up here, okay, when x is equal to 0, that's that spot right here, isn't it? Okay. And then when x is equal to 2, that's this spot right here. So if I'm going to do average rate of change or slope, okay, I'm going to use, okay, 0, negative 1, and then 2, 1. So I'm going to use this idea of slope, y sub 2 minus y sub 1, x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Okay, so I'm going to make this my first point. So I'll make this x sub 1, y sub 1. It's kind of small, but you can follow with the idea. You've done this enough times. X sub 2, y sub 2. And so since this is the first point, second point. And I'm going to do something called box substitution. So I'm going to set it up with just some boxes. Okay? So y minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I was about to write an x there. And so what goes in these boxes? So y sub 2 goes here, which is a 1. Okay? And then y sub 1 goes here, which is negative 1. Oh, okay. That's important because that's going to help me not make a mistake with this double negative. So that's minus negative 1. Okay? You still got to put this negative in here because the minus came from the formula. The negative came from our point. And so they're both important. You can't leave one of them out. Okay? That'd be just rude. Alright, so here we are. Next we've got x sub 2, which goes right here, which is a 2, as a matter of fact. And then x sub 1, which is 0, goes in this other box. So as we simplify this guy down a little bit, we get 1 minus negative 1, which is really adding. So 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 minus 0 is 2, and then that is equal to just plain old 1. Okay, so this is the average rate of change right here, is 1. And if you thought about this, if you could almost count it too. Up 1. Well, since it's on halves, isn't it? Okay. So, let me back off a little bit there. This is going to look kind of strange. Why is it going to look strange? Well, because it's on a weird scale. So this is actually 1. And then there's 1, and then there's 1, and there's 1. So it's still got a slope of 1, but it looks like 2 over 1, but it isn't because that's a 1 right there, because they messed with the scale of it. So there is average rate of change. That's how that works. No matter what they do, and remember, what did they give us? They gave us something that looked like 0 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 2. So what they did is they gave us the x values, then we have to go to the graph to get the y values so we can do our yum-yums on a picnic table here and see using our slope formula to come up with the average rate of change. Okay, so the average rate of change, because when you see that, that is code for, whoops, get my fingers off of this, that's code for average rate of change or slope. Okay, alright, so let's go look at a couple examples here from the homework and see if we can make sure you stay on track there. So this first thing here, we said there at the table shows the values of the function on which the intervals of the function average rate of change. Oops, average rate of change, that's code for average rate of change, that's code for slope. What do you need for slope? 2 points. Okay, so if they tell you from 0, x equals 0 to x equals 1, well, that's not much information, but if I go up here, what do I notice? That we got 0 and 50 go together. Okay, and then what? What goes with the 1? So here is your 2 points here, 0, 50, and 1, 75. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write these out so help you make sure it's extra clear of what's going on here. Okay, so we got our first point is 0, 50. Our second point is 175. You may not have to write all this, but I'm just trying to make sure you're extra clear. So this is x sub 1, y sub 1, and this will be x sub 2, y sub 2. Now I know that's really, really small, even for you to see, but I think you can follow track. So I'm going to come over to the side and do my box substitutions. So So y sub 2 goes here, which is 75. Y sub 1 goes here, which is 50. X sub 2 goes here, which is 1. And x sub 1, so x sub 2 is 1, x sub 1 is 0. Okay, so when we simplify this down, 75 minus 50 is 25. And then 1 minus 0 is 1. So our rate of change is just simply going to be 25. Ultimately, that is what our average rate of change is going to be. Okay, and then on which of these positive? Well, I think most of these are going to be positive, so I'll go ahead and add on the idea of this is positive. Positive. Okay. But what I want you to do is find the average rate of change or the slope for each one, and then surely you can figure out whether it's positive or negative from there. I'm not nearly as worried about that. Okay, so yeah, I'm not really cared about all that. I am worried about this guy right there. Okay, now then here on the next part, it's the same idea, except instead of giving you a table, they gave you a picture. They gave you a picture. Okay, so again, this is average rate of change, so that's code for slope. Okay, so they gave me x equals -3. Well, where does x equal -3? Right here. Okay, so that is right there. So what does the y, what's that point right there? Well, that's the point -3, 0. So even though they did not give me the y value, they gave me a picture so I could figure it out. And that will always be the case. Okay, they'll give you somehow to figure out the other. So how about this x equals -2? Where is x equal -2? Well, not here. That's the axis. Where on the curve does x equal -2? Well, it equals -2 right here. Right there. And so what is the ordered pair for that? Well, that's -2, 2. Okay, so all of your ordered pairs have to be on the graph. Okay, and so now what are we going to do from here? Simply going to take and do some little substitution. I'm going to go ahead and do my boxes so I make sure I track. This really helps you keep all your signs straight. Okay, because sometimes you get that double negative in there and it really helps you keep that straight. So I'm going to take a second, go ahead and label this x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so what goes here in this first box is y2, and then y1, which is 0, and then x sub 2, which is negative 2, and then x sub 1, which is negative 3. Okay, so 2 minus 0 is 2. Negative 2 minus negative 3. Okay, that's really plus 3, isn't it? So negative 2 plus 3 gives me positive 1. Okay, so my average rate of change is 2. And again, you could have counted that off too, couldn't you? Go rise 2, run 1, 2, 1. So rise 2, run 1. So you can actually count it off on the graph as well. So average rate of change, code for slope. Slope, y sub 2 minus y sub 1, x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I need to see this step. I need you to see this, write this down. If you don't write this, you don't write that, that's you know, okay. But you got to write this. Okay? And then, because that's what it's asking for, slope. I'll write in all these arrows so you get the idea that it has to be on the line, on the graph itself. And so that should really keep you busy for a good little bit there, I would bet. Then they go back and ask you some more questions. So using this same graph, what are the intervals in which the function is positive? Okay, so what are they asking for? From where to where are the y values positive? Okay, so like, alright, and then here and whoop, up there. Okay, and then the next section, where where the function values, the y values negative. And then where are the zeros? Well, we kind of haven't really talked about zeros, but where does it cross the x-axis, right? So at this point, and so x equals what here? Negative 1, and then here. So you have 3 places where it crosses, so you have 3 numbers called zeros. So those would be your 3 zeros of your function. Okay, which brings us to number 11. And on our practice problem, so that'll be section 3 where we're going to actually do some graphs. So module 1, section 2, part 2 complete, and now we're going to move on in our next one on how to do these little graphs.